Hello and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, you know the drill. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a trip around the state of Florida tonight, and we're going to check in with the best captains in each area and find out how their fishing's been this week. We want to know that, and I got a question for them tonight. You know, do they freeze food for their families? I talked to so many guys that are down on frozen fish, but other guys do it with some fancy methods. Seems to work out okay. I want to know how the pros take care of their fish. All right, let's get it rolling. We're going to take a quick trip over to Nosara, Costa Rica to check in with one Craig Sutton, and then we will come back to the northeast corner of Florida, work our way down the east coast, up the west coast, out the panhandle, until we know where every fish in the state is. This week, just like every week, the Florida Sportsman Action Spotter podcast is brought to you by Yamaha, by Shimano, by Nosara Paradise, by Young Boats, and by Tournament Master Chum. Now, let's get our trip around the state fired up. It's time to talk fishing. Before we start our trip around Florida tonight, let's take a quick trip to my favorite fishing destination. You know where that is, Nosara, Costa Rica, and check in with one Craig Sutton. Craig, how we doing in Costa Rica?
Man, we are doing good, Ricky. We got rain last week, like Tuesday or Wednesday, I forget which. Actually, we had a little shower one day, then the next day it rained really hard. And normally, this time of year, the water gets a little too warm, and we've got to go way offshore to find the good water, a little bit cooler water. But not right now. The fish are everywhere, and they're nice. We had a 22 mahi day plus marlin, sailfish, and yellowfin.
Oh, my goodness.
We caught more marlin last week than we did sailfish.
I tell you what, that's crazy, and I can't believe the numbers of big mahi you guys are getting this year.
Dude, check that marlin out Wilson caught on the harvester.
Yeah,
that's a true. I think it's 400. I mean, we posted it this morning, but he called it 350. It's every bit of 350, if not bigger.
How about that? That's a nice blue.
Big shoulder blue, buddy. It's just like, wow.
Good deal. All right. What's your availability looking like? When can people come in February? You all booked up for them?
I'm from the 3rd of February to the 13th, we are totally booked. We don't have one house open.
Okay. So,
but we got a few dates on the fishing. But March has still got a few days open, and then April's starting to get full, but we still got some room in April and May. But then our second high season, that June, July, and August, it's starting to get full.
Oh, I tell you what, if you want to be there when I think the fishing's the best, you book your August trip right now. Craig, I agree. That is outstanding news. I can't wait to hear about next week. Please tell me we can check with you then.
Absolutely, brother man.
All right.
Look forward to it.
Craig Sutton from Nosara Fishing in Nosara, Costa Rica. The year was 1953 when one of the true pioneers of big game fishing just hung it up. No, it wasn't any of our podcasters. It was none other than Ernest Hemingway. I just don't want to do it anymore, he's credited with saying. The tackle has become so sophisticated, the fish just don't have a chance. Can you imagine walking him through the aisles of Strike Zone Fishing and showing him the latest and greatest from Shimano? Can you imagine handing him a Saragusa spinner that weighs less than his bait did and could put more torque on a rampaging tuna than the giant old reels of his day? No, Ernest, I'm afraid you left us way too early. The fights with great fish still go on today, and sometimes we still get beat. But if I were a sea monster of your day, I think I'd still rather do battle with you than face the tools that Shimano has stocked in Strike Zone Fishing 68 years later. Let's get our trip around the state started with a quick stop up in northeast Florida. That's where Captain David Voorhees has been fishing with his jacket on. Getting a little chilly up there, Cap?
I tell you, Ricky, it comes and it goes. I mean, this roller coaster we're on has been something else. We'll have a week of some beautiful 70 mid to high 70-degree weather. And then all of a sudden, boom, we're back down in the 40s and 50s like we are now. But, that roller coaster sort of helps you come up with a pattern on these fish. You want to try to fish these warming trends, and the bite's actually been really good. Now, we had something happen this week that was phenomenal. We had a really strong west wind that took place, and it happened just after the new moon. And man, I'm telling you what, we haven't seen low tides like this in quite some time. And it really pushed the reds into the deep holes and out off the flats onto these edges. And it was a really good bite. And so you have to keep an eye on the weather. Up here in Northeast Florida, the wind is going to tell you a lot. It's going to tell you when these storms are approaching. You'll get a normal pattern. You're going to get these northwest winds to north winds coming out. Occasionally, you're going to get a northeaster, but that's usually after the fronts move through. But as the front starts to approach, you'll start getting these real strong southerly winds, and that's telling you, and you'll get these real warming trends, but real strong southern winds, and that tells you the front's getting ready to approach. And then boom, they'll come through, and then you'll get these bluebird days, and it's really cold. And those are your tough days to fish. Right after the front goes through, we get the cold temperatures, bluebird days. That makes for some tough fishing. But with that being said, the trout bite, we talked about the trout bite, and it seems like what I'm hearing is we have some pockets of good trout here and there. They're not good everywhere, but you do get these reports of some people saying, and it seems like north of the St. Johns River and then way, way down closer towards St. Augustine, you hear good reports of some trouts here and there, good size, good numbers and all that stuff. But it's not consistently all over. Now, the sheephead bite seems to be getting stronger and stronger every day. So, keep your ears, pinned down, listen for that. Pretty soon, I think the sheephead bite's going to be really good when we start getting a real steady warming trend.
David, are they in the river or are they out at the jetties?
They're in both places. They're sort of scattered out. There's not a huge concentration in any particular place. You have to sort of, and that's what I'm finding with a lot of our fish. You pick up a few with the flounder. You get the flounder now seem to be more back in the creeks. And the ones you're finding are some small flounder, but yet in amongst those smaller flounders, you're going to get you some nice keeper flounder in there. But they tend to be sort of way back in those creeks. I think that's where a lot of your minnows and your bait fish are going to be. But we talked about, coming up with a pattern, how to figure out these patterns. And first, a week before last, I talked about, establishing yourself a good library, good locations to go check out. Once you get those good locations, then you want to figure out, you want to start out fast and then go to slow. You want to start out shallow and go to deep. So you want to see the fast to slow is going to tell you how aggressive the bite is. So if you got to really move it slow, the bite is going to be, they're a little lethargic. Now, I like to start shallow first. And usually the way I start out is I go to my shallow mud flats and I usually work them. If I don't get anything, I go right to my closest deep hole. And then I work that really, really good. And then if I don't get anything there, I'll go back to the shallow. I'll go back and forth till I start coming up with what I say. There's a pattern. We're getting a pattern here. But the pattern that we've been seeing that's really been consistent is that high outgoing tide late in the day, starting around 12, 1, 2 o'clock later in the day. You want that higher tide and you want it to be moving out. That early morning incoming tide's hasn't been productive. It's been a tough fight. It's really tough fishing on that condition. But at that high outgoing tide, these reds seem to start moving, and they come off of these flats. They're moving out of the creeks, and there seems to be a lot of moving going on, and the bite's been pretty good on those conditions.
Well, good. If we can stay out of too much colder weather, those reds will probably stay on the move where we can get to them. I hate it when they get so lethargic that we just can't do anything to them. David, that's
we actually, this week we fished, and we actually got really good fights out of the fish. You know, we saw this water temperature come back up, and I can't emphasize this enough, but guys, you up here in Northeast Florida, really keep your eye on that water temperature. Use your depth finder, not just to locate fish or to find your bottoms and stuff like that, but use that temperature gauge on there and keep an eye on that temperature and look for those warming trends.
Got it. Great report, David. Please tell me we can check with you again next week.
Absolutely, Ricky. I'll be here, buddy.
All right, buddy. Oh, by the way, just to throw in on your report there, offshore, boy, the trolling out at the ledge has been slow. Gosh, our buddy Craig was out there. He had a blackfin, a bonita, and a kingfish, I think, and that was it. Bottom fishing has been very good in 120 to 150 feet. Thank you, David. We'll talk with you next week.
All right, tight lines, Ricky.
You too, buddy. Captain David Voorhees from Northeast Florida. Our thanks to David Voorhees for a great Northeast report. Now let's head down to East Central and check in with one Captain Jimmy Ross. Jim, how are you?
Doing good this week, Rick.
Good deal. I'm glad to hear it. How's your fishing been?
Fishing has actually been really good.
Good.
The guys that I've talked to that have been getting offshore have been doing really good on the snapper. A lot of vermilions, a lot of lanes, a lot of mangroves. So it's been a good bite. Of course, you're picking through those American reds, but there's a lot of other snapper out there to be caught. You're just going to have to be patient and weed your way through them. One of the things that I found the guys are telling me that is really helping them is keep your bait small. It's much smaller than what you would normally use offshore. And the red snapper don't seem to be paying attention to them as much. You typically want to put like a sardine or a cigar minnow or something on and drop it down. They're saying they're just cutting the sardines into just little tiny pieces, or squids into little tiny pieces, almost like they're trigger fishing. And they're still getting the bites off of those other snapper, and they're sort of weeding out those bigger red snapper in the process.
That is a great tip and absolutely true. I've got a young man that's currently getting treatments down at the Proton Center. We're going to take him out next week, and we're taking a box of sardines with us, so I have an evil heart. Because we know what's going to happen to that young man. But
hopefully you'll cut those things small enough that it won't put those 15 and 20 pound red snappers on every bite for him.
I want to see this 14-year-old get jerked to the gunnel a few times first. But you're right, Jimmy. And if you can find something that looks just like a small squid, but is really a cuttlefish, oh man, does that make a good tiny bait. If you cut that up into little pieces, because they cannot get it off the hook.
Yeah, anything that's tough like that. Even fish bites seem to work. Some of those artificial things. I remember back in the day, my grandfather used to have all these Uncle Josh pork rinds.
There you go. Yep.
And it was amazing to me that back in the day we used to use Uncle Josh pork rinds. My grandfather used to have little jars of those things, and we would actually put those behind a sea witch, drag them along the buoy line there at Canaveral, and catch king mackerel on them behind those sea witches. And so a lot of those artificial / natural baits, I don't know really what kind of category you'd put a pork rind or a fish bite or one of those things in, because it's not truly a bait, but it's not truly a lure. But those things work really well also right now. So just using little pieces of bait type material or little pieces of bait fish are the way to go to get these snapper when you're offshore right now, and eliminate a lot of those larger red snapper that we have to, contend with.
Bingo. You're exactly right. Jimmy, we appreciate it so much. It's a great report. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I look forward to it, Rick.
All right. I hope you get to feeling better. Captain Jim Ross from East Central. Our thanks to Jim Ross for a great East Central report. Now we're going to hop on down to Kokomo and check in Islamorada at Bud and Mary's with one Captain Brandon Storin. Bean, how we doing?
I'm great, Rick. How you been?
Been excellent, buddy. I'm surviving wintertime one more year. Tell me how you fishing. Tell me how your fishing's been down in Islamorada.
Fishing's been really good. we had that cold front, which means things heat up on the patch reefs. We had some really good fishing on the patches, some nice porgies, some mutton snappers, some groupers, even though we had to let them go. Nice sized lane snappers, yellow jacks, just a wide variety of fun. Also, since the cold front water started heating up a little bit, I got into thousands of free swimming cobias and permits for 4 days in a row. And that was a lot of fun. Just trying to come up to the surface to catch some sun, pushing wakes while it's flat calm. That was a ball. There's like almost no cooler sight out there.
Wow. No. How was the size on the cobia?
Big. Like,
Really?
we definitely, I think the biggest one we caught was like 45 pounds.
It's a good one.
At least.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And we did not catch not one cobia that was smaller than what the minimum is for last year. Like every single one of them was more than 33 inches to the fork. Right.
Were most of them over 36?
Most of them were, and then there's like a handful that were like 34, 35 to the fork. But
we need to let them go. We need them. Yep.
Honestly, with the amount of people I take fishing, since this is backcountry charters mostly, we only killed one cobia each time, so it's more than enough meat for a big group of people. So
that's a fantastic report. Now, is that pretty common for you to see in January?
No, I feel like it's more of like a springtime cold front type of deal, like March-ish, But you can see it at there's any given time you can see them. You never know when. It was ironic how it just happened 4 days in a row around the same exact area. And I'll never forget, like, one of the days I'm like, oh my God, it's got to be like 500 permit right there. And all of a sudden I look behind the school permit and there's like 150 cobia following them.
Man,
and quadruple header. I was hooked up. All three customers were hooked up, and just complete chaos. It was wild.
That's the kind of chaos you got to love there, Cap. That's outstanding.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard much from offshore?
Yeah, there's been a few more sailfish being caught. We're coming up on that new moon, so there's been a few wahoo caught as well. It seems like that been a handful of boats also getting to a few African pompano. Of course, there's been plenty of yellowtails around as always, and mackerels, lots of mackerels out there.
Good deal. Good deal. Outstanding report, Brandon. I'm glad to hear it. Glad to hear your fishing's good. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Captain Brandon Bean Storin out of Islamorada, Bud and Mary's. I'll bet you don't even remember the days that all us cool kids would rub baby oil mixed with iodine to help us get even darker in the summertime. Being burnt was cool, and even if you weren't a surfing legend, you sure looked the part. Oh, man, if a bunch of us old guys paid the price for our vanity. We never knew the skin problem and health damage that awaited us. Today's fishermen have the options of being so much healthier in the sun than we ever thought of. Thanks in no small part to the Castaway Hat Company, who not only provides our podcasters with Castaway straw hats, but they make the coolest prints on the underside of the brims you ever saw. You may think your bimini top or T-top blocks the sun, but as an awful lot of us OGs can tell you, you can't have enough protection from sun damage. Do what we do. Put on the sunblock and put on your Castaway straw hat. You'll look the part of today's best anglers, and you'll even be helping the environment. That's because for each Castaway hat sold, the Castaway Company is going to pay to have 1 pound of trash removed from our waterways. The burning Florida sun won't be raced in your skin, and believe me, when you age a few years, you'll thank us old guys with a lifetime on the water. So go to CastawayHatCo.com and get your best sun protection today. The Castaway Hat Company. They've got a hat for every adventure. Our thanks to Brandon Storin for a great Islamorada report. Man, am I glad to hear about cobia. With the new regulations, we may be looking at a new day of cobia fishing. Now, let's move over to 10,000 Islands and check in with one Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Good, good. My contact in Islamorada told me about seeing schools of hundreds of legal cobia.
Nice. That's awesome. We've got a good cobia bite right now, but
good.
not hundreds. Yeah. So that's we're not all that far from there. So hopefully we get some of those fish that migrate in our area. But we got a lot of smaller fish, upper 20-inch range, lower 30-inch range. But and I shouldn't say that. I mean, some of the offshore guys are definitely getting some big fish, not in huge numbers, but the near shore guys, a couple miles from shore, hitting public wrecks, and we're seeing plenty of them, and they're all over the water column, bottom, mid, and top. So get them fired up. Obviously, they're going to come up top, but it's been a pretty consistent bite for everybody. So we're pretty excited about that as well. Good to hear that's going on down there.
That's really sweet. What else are you catching?
It's kind of the on the near shore side. We've been doing that, but doing a bunch of bottom fishing for some really, really big sheep's head if guys need some table fare. And they're all good ones. I mean, they're 4 or 5 pounders, and even lots of small ones in the mix. But you're definitely getting the lion's share of bigger ones right now. So that's really good. Bunch of lane snappers in the mix. This is all public, numbers. They're easy for anybody to go out and do this if the weather's right. And that's this time of year, you just got to watch the weather because, winds can kick up, pretty fierce, for a day or two and then let it calm back down. So, as such, kind of have to play the game between near shore and inshore. You obviously get the windy days. Plenty of places to hide in the 10,000 islands from the wind. The key this time of year is generally the daytime hours we get that low tide. Low tide and heavy winds generally means muddy water. So you got to do your best to kind of figure out where that wind has been blowing from, not necessarily on the day you're going fishing, and kind of predict, maybe where that clean water would be. The safest play in our area is, staying near the back, if you will, the northern part of the 10,000 islands. So, plenty of fresh, clean water flowing out of the creeks, so that's, so it's a good mix, and, you can tuck away, you literally can see the water transition from kind of a, mild chocolate milk color back to that tannic water. It's pretty easy to see that, where that breaks. And, generally, if you find that water, you're going to find cooperative fish. So, big, maybe not so much casting right now as it is trying to find clean water. Don't waste your time. You're going to catch a lot of catfish and, some drunk fish and things like that. You can wait it out and catch some reds and, some black drum in that dirty water, but clean water is the key in the winter. So that's the ticket right now.
And of course, you're talking about the more tannic water being the cleaner water than the muddy water.
Yeah, I like to, when everybody asks about our water, if you're not familiar with it, I call it iced tea color.
Right.
It's clear,
right?
But it from looking at it from on top of the surface, it looks dark, and but if you're pulling a bait through it, you can kind of see where that tannic water comes in. It looks like iced tea.
Hey, Steve, do you ever freeze fish for your family?
I tried not to. I've got, probably in the last 5-6 years, I bought a vacuum seal machine, and I vacuum seal everything. And if I'm gonna keep it, but I'm a big proponent of eating this stuff fresh. But how about you, Rick?
Well, I picked up a tip from a guy. I'm like you. I want to eat it fresh if I can, but I picked up a tip from a guy, and so far it's worked out really well for me.
Yeah.
You take a piece of fish, wrap it in cling wrap, okay? And you put it in the freezer just long enough for it to freeze. Half a day's plenty. All right. Then you vacuum seal it with in the cling wrap. And I haven't stretched it out real far yet. He says to me, you can open that fish in a year and you won't be able to tell the difference. So I don't know about that, but anyway, that's a tip for this week anyway.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing I do notice too, I see a lot of guys, I'm not sure how you ice your fish down. I like ice baths on the boat.
Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of people just throw them on regular ice, and it's my belief, and I'm not. Maybe you can retort this, or call me call me out if I got this wrong, but I've heard that when fish, you put them on ice, they're struggling a lot to expire, and they can build up lactic acids and soften up the meat. Have you heard that? Is that
I have
I think
heard
that's where the ice bath.
Well, I tell you,
good.
what else what I've heard along those same lines is the last thing you want to do, and we used to do this. God, we did it all the time when we were commercial fishing. You'd unhook a vermilion, a beeline, or something, throw him on the deck. And just let him beat himself up and all. And fish bruise just like we do, Steve. And
sure.
A lot of times when you taste strength in a fish, that fish is strong. That fish is strong. What you're actually doing is eating a bruise that he's got on him. And, I tell you what, you go in any grocery store, I'm not going to call out any names. You go in a grocery store and you look at their fresh fish counter. Sure does make you glad to be a fisherman, doesn't it?
It's pretty bad, isn't it? I mean, with no disrespect to any of our local fish companies that sell fish, but my gosh, it's bad. I'm the same way.
I will tell this.
Man, I look at that.
I will tell this story one time and one time only. I walked into a grocery store. They've got a special on fresh Spanish mackerel, which you and I both know is not the firmest meat anyway. All right. The eyes are way back in their head. Okay.
Oh, man.
I would not have, under any circumstances, pulled these things for bait. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they were that bad. I forget getting anywhere near eating them. I went in there on a Monday and they were there. I went in there on a Wednesday and they were there. I went in there on a Friday and they were gone. Hey, guess what the special was that Friday?
Tell me.
Fresh fillet of Spanish mackerel.
A little mushy. I would imagine that was a little mushy.
Oh, buddy, I'm glad we live in Florida and I'm glad we fish hard. Steve, as always, we appreciate it. We'll talk with you next week.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Thanks, Captain Steve Dahl from the 10,000 Islands. Now let's move up to Southwest Florida and Greg Stamper territory. Greg, how we doing?
I'm doing okay, Rick. What's up?
Oh, not much, buddy. I need a fishing report. Tell me about Southwest Florida.
All right, Southwest Florida's doing really good. We have lots of fish right now as far as the backcountry bay areas. There's trout, no problem there. There's definitely a lot of sheepshead still around on our dock, but we have not caught a lot of giant reds other than once or twice this week where they just kind of show up on their own, which is fantastic. We're cut baiting them and we're using shrimp. The funny thing is the big fish have only been caught on pieces of shrimp on jigs around the structures that are kind of, our new blowdowns.
Mm-hmm. Hurricane damage, in other words, huh?
Yeah, you got it, Rick.
Hey, Greg, what are the guys getting sheepshead on now? Have you got fiddlers, or is it live shrimp, or what's the deal?
No, we don't do a lot of fiddlers in my neck of the woods. We do a lot of the pieces of shrimp. We do small pieces of crab or barnacles. We rip them off those anywhere there's barnacles. If you can shave it off a little bit with like a shovel and put them on your hook, you will catch them. But the small piece of shrimp on a 2-aught circle hook has been working best.
Now, Greg, does that shrimp need to be live? I know for us it makes a big difference.
No.
It doesn't make a difference if you cut up a live shrimp, huh?
It needs to be fresh.
Gotcha.
Well, let's go that route. You cannot have a frozen piece of shrimp that's been in a bag or something like that. You need to use something that's fresh. So you can have a fresh shrimp that has just recently died. That's fine. But if you do not have a fresh shrimp or a freshly dead shrimp, I don't use it ever.
Gotcha. Perfect. All right, buddy. Have you heard anything real quick from offshore?
Offshore has been okay. There's a couple guys that are starting to see some nice permit. Other than that, it hasn't been all that great. There's a lot of small triple tail, but other than that, Rick, not a lot going on.
Triple tail haven't really started yet. All right, Greg.
Well, they're there, but they're not big.
They're just the big ones aren't here yet. I got you.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
You got it, Rick. Thank you. Bye.
All right, Captain Greg Stamper.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is the mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with Menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat Facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to Greg Stamper for a great Southwest report. Now let's move up to West Central. That's Ray Markham territory. Raymond, how you doing?
I'm doing much better, thank you.
You sound better. You were a little weak last week. Sound like you had a little bug or something.
I had a cold going on. It's kind of catching the tail end of it here, but I think I got her on the run, and it looks like we got some warmer days just ahead of us here. So, all should be good.
Good deal. I'm glad to hear it. Anything to your fishing? Your fishing been good this week?
Well, I'll tell you, I am getting people sending me pictures and reports and all that have been real good this week. Trout fishing absolutely amazed me, but there are several guys that I got pictures of some really nice trout, 18 to 19 inch fish, and they said they released a ton of them over 19. A ton. No, that's a lie. That's a fishing story. They said about a dozen. All right.
Well, they might have weighed. No, hold on now. A dozen might have weighed a ton.
The pictures weighed at least a ton. I know that.
There you go. There you go.
But, and the guys that are, sneaking around in the backwaters are doing pretty well with redfish here. Across the pond, Tampa Bay area, on the East Shore over there, they've been whacking some serious redfish. I mean, all over the slot, bottom end to top end. And I'm hearing some pretty good news from some of the guys down around Manatee River and into Sarasota Bay, catching some redfish, bluefish, a few scattered pompano, an occasional bluefish, but all seems to be pretty good on the inshore scene. There's a few guys that are still targeting snook. Most of the snook they're catching are up in the rivers and the creeks and the dark residential canals where there's some deeper water. But, they're doing pretty good, releasing them all, so that's all good.
Good. You hearing anything from offshore?
I was just going to say, I've got a few guys that have been sending me a couple of pictures this week, getting out anywhere starting at around 40 to 50 feet and out to around 80, catching some really nice hogfish. Continuing on out, they're doing pretty well with a variety of snappers. 3 or 4 different kinds, mangrove snapper, lane, vermilions, and then getting out deeper. Well, they're catching some red grouper inside of about 70, 80 feet, but they're small. So the ones that they're catching that are legal size and basically your fire truck with no siren and flashing light are sitting out anywhere from 120 to 170 feet. So You got the boat and the time and the gas, go for it.
Gotcha. Cap, we appreciate it. That's an outstanding report. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, Ray. Captain Ray Markham from West Central. Sure, I'm glad to hear he's got good trout fishing. I don't think any fish tells us more about the quality of our water than trout. If you got bad water, you got something bad in the water, like red tide, like an abnormal pollution, something like that, trout will be the first fish to leave. Hey, it's finally fall, and how many of us have been waiting for the magic of the mullet run to start? There are literally miles of mullet moving along just about every area of Florida coastline. What you need to cash in on the tarpon, snook, reds, trout, sharks, etc. that are feeding on the poor fingerlings is the perfect mullet imitation. Well, for my money, you can skip all the high-dollar made-in-China mullet imitators. For me and all the podcasters I've talked with, the perfect mullet imitation is made right here in Stuart, Florida, and it's the D.O.A. Bait Buster. Mark Nichols, the owner and manufacturer of D.O.A., spent years designing different bait busters to swim shallow, medium, or deep. What makes the bait buster so special? I'll tell you what I think. I think it's the tail. If your bait buster is moving, the tail is flapping. No predator can stand that tail flapping in his face. The D.O.A. Bait Buster. It's the perfect mullet run bait. Now let's check in with the mayor of Homosassa, one William Toney. Mr. Mayor, are you with us?
I'm here in downtown Homosassa. It's actually a little bit chilly this evening, and it's got the gnats and a fury.
And, well, let me ask you, in your official capacity as mayor, you have to know a lot about foreign countries. What is the difference in Dubai and Abu Dhabi?
Well, I knew Abu Dhabi was one of the words I used on Scooby-Doo when I used to watch that cartoon, but I don't know about Dubai.
You don't know the difference?
Nope.
In Dubai, they don't care about the Flintstones, but the Abu Dhabi do. I've been saving.
There you go. Yeah, I got it wrong because I said Scooby-Doo, but it is the Flintstones.
I've been saving that one for you all week, Cap.
Oh, man, you threw me a curveball on that one. That's good.
Tell me about your fishing.
Well, fishing's been very good, and here's what it is. This the last couple months here before we get into real good spring weather is going to be an up and down. We got a lot of wind coming this week, but where I've been catching my trout is in the deeper creek mouths out on the edge. A lot of it's been chilly, but it hasn't been a good river bite. We had some good cold weather around Christmas and drove in some redfish and black drum and sheepshead, but the water's moderated out to about 63, 64. So those, trout are on them outside edges in the creek mouths. But what really amazed me last week, we caught a 40-inch snook in 61-degree water.
Oof, that's a big girl.
That fish ate a jerkbait, and I knew it wasn't a redfish because it made about a 50-yard run and jumped like a tarpon. I said, that's a big snook. But seeing our snook out in that temperature makes me wonder if they've acclimated to our area and maybe a little bit tougher than those down south. I don't know. But it was a good catch. But, the big thing right now, if it's not windy like it has been and puffing pretty hard, the rocks out 8 to 15 feet have been producing some real nice sheepshead on live shrimp. And a lot of the structure, it could be natural, but don't pass up some of those big markers like the ends of the channels and things like that are three-legged with a lot of structure around them.
Mm-hmm.
They'll gather there, especially on the incoming tide. Now, if it's a windy day, the inside, with the creek mouths where there's a deep drop, we were catching our trout right on the edge of a deep hole there the other day. And did have some good tide and caught some nice redfish. Most of the redfish are back kind of in the backcountry a little bit, but you got to get a little bit of water for them to want to start biting. Get out on the outside in St. Martin's Keys, those fish are pretty cold, and I worked really hard to get none of them to bite the other day. So, when you got a nice jumbo-sized shrimp and you watch them swim past it and not even blink, you might as well leave that area.
I got you. I understand, boy. Everything's based on how cold it gets this time of year, and I agree with you. I think the snook in Jacksonville are acclimating to a colder climate. I think obviously we haven't had anything like 2010, but we've had some pretty cold water, and they seem to be hanging in there pretty darn well. So maybe they're changing. Maybe they're changing just like the weather is. Hope so anyway.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to ask you real quick. I know we had a question tonight about, how I deal with, family and wanting fish. Do we go catch it that day, or do we go catch some and freeze it till the end of the week when we're not working and all that?
Yep.
But this is what I got to say. The best way to eat fresh fish with Captain William is do a shore lunch. That way you just caught it.
you are dead on. Oh, man. Do I look forward to my next one of those. Captain William, as always, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be here in downtown Homosassa.
You got it. Captain William Tony. Thank you, buddy. Now let's move over into the northwest section of the state and take one Kevin Lanier. Captain Kevin, how we doing?
Captain Rick, we're doing just fine up here in the northwest.
Good. Is it a little chilly this evening?
Little nippy this evening. Yes, it is.
Yep. We're not gonna complain about such a mild no winter this year. We've had a better share of it. There's no doubt. Have you heard any news on the fishing this week?
Yes, I have. We've got some pretty good pompano fishing going on around here. They're really starting to show up.
Good.
People are getting a few sheepshead here and there. There's still some nice redfish showing. Just the last couple of days, there's been a few real nice redfish, a number of them above the slot, but still a lot of fun to catch.
Outstanding. Is there any live fiddlers available, or is everything on live shrimp now?
Everything's on shrimp. Everything's on shrimp or spoons right now.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, what spoon do you guys use over there for pompano, Kevin?
Any spoon that weighs about a half ounce, 3/4 of an ounce. Any gold spoon will work just fine.
How big? Are they real tiny ones?
No, I would say they're probably 1.5 to 2 inch spoons. Just depends on what a guy likes to use, crocodile, something like that.
Well, how about that? I'd never seen them used that big. I have seen them caught on the old Doc Scoofy jigs, but over here in Northeast Florida, it's almost all cut up live shrimp. You take a live shrimp, pop his head off, peel the shell off the top of his head, and kind of thread him on that hook. It gives him feet like a sand flea, and they seem to appreciate the combination of the smell of the shrimp and the legs of the sand flea. I don't know if that's what they appreciate, but I know that does work. Right. Hey, let me ask you a quick question. Do you freeze fish for your family?
We do. I do, especially this time of year. If we get out vermilions, we'll put vermilions in the freezer.
What's your method to keep them fresh tasting when they come out?
Oh, I vacuum seal them. I mean, we put them straight in the, we've got a chamber vac that just sucks the air and everything out of them. And I've eaten them 6 months later, and they taste just like they came out of the water.
I got an interesting tip from one of the boys tonight. Wrap them in cling wrap. Okay. Wrap them in cling wrap, put them in the freezer just until they freeze, like maybe overnight. And then shrink wrap them. You can't tell the difference in them a year later, is what I've been told.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think if you can get them vacuum sealed really good, if you've got a quality vacuum sealer, I think it makes all the to me, that's one of the best investments I've ever made as far as fishing goes.
Oh, I agree. 100%. Cap, we appreciate it ever so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
We'll be back here next week. I promise.
Captain Kevin Lanier from KC's Charters. Thank you, Skip. Well, you know what? Fishing hadn't been bad. The weather's kind of moderated all around the state this week. Up in Jacksonville, a little better trout season than we expected. The reds are moving on and off the flats with the cold fronts. That's not unusual. You get down in East Central, Jim Ross is pretty doggone happy with the way things were going for them. And man, was I ever thrilled to hear about the cobia down in the Islamorada area and the big schools of fish on top of the water, a lot of them legal size. Gosh, maybe our limits are going to get us a new day of cobia fishing. We'll see. Down in 10,000 Islands, the fish are always biting. Steve Dahl said the key is the tannic water. Moving up through West Central, even Captain Grumpy Ray Markham was happy with his fishing and especially his trout fishing this time of year. So you know what? Pretty good week and some good tips. Here's how you freeze your fish. Wrap it in cling wrap. Freeze it. As soon as it freezes, put it in the shrink wrap machine, shrimp wrap it, and it'll be just like you took it out of the fish box. Important to remember, handling them when they're going in the fish box, so important. Bleeds your fish, put them in an icy slush, you'll be eating a better product soon. The Florida Sportsman Action Spotter podcast is brought to you this week and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. Oh, it's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats. You want the finest in flats, bay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. By the Castaway Hat Company. That's the hat that's helping save our seas. And by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. As for me, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we want to thank you for tuning in to another Florida Sportsman Action Spotter podcast. We're going to take these trips around the state every week to find out the latest fishing news. We hope you'll join us. We hope you'll rate us and subscribe. Got a question for us? Ask us on Florida Sportsman Facebook, or you can email me at rick@floridasportsman.com. Until next week, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we'll see you on the rip.